Hey guys, welcome to the Game of Money. Obviously, I'm Oren and we are sponsored, as usual, not by Microsoft, not by Facebook, but by Pitch Anything, the book. You want to help out here? You like the people I bring, the conversations we have here, buy another copy of Pitch Anything. That helps support the whole platform. Otherwise, if you don't, I'll just pay for it myself because this information belongs out there. So welcome. Today on the Game of Money, we're going to be talking about not money, but something even more important, health. Got Dr. David Boyd here. I've known a long time. We're in an organization together called Warrior. If you're not familiar with Warrior, maybe by the end of this quick conversation, you will be. A very cool organization that we both belong to. This is really interesting. I've been on, 500 podcasts, and I'm not going to say I wing it, but I don't do a lot of preparation because normally I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but I just know more than the guests normally. And so they don't stump me. They don't confuse me. I'm going to take a lot of heat for this, but I put, a quarter to a third of my brain in park, and I think about motorcycles or, hockey or something else. And I get through, but this podcast, I had to print out questions because I'm at the mercy of your experience, your intellect, and your know-how. So, Dr. David Boyd, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
So, I can't do justice to your, background, but I think you are. So we have to be careful because I know the people are your clients. They're on a private client list. I know them from just bumping into them in my community. But some of the most important entrepreneurs, politicians in America are your clients. We're not going to get into the client roster. I've been a client of yours, and so what mainly is your practice, just for context?
It's, essentially what we do is we try to find problems before they start. And it's interesting where I started versus where I'm at now. The practice essentially started out of frustration. I was a hospital doctor during the whole pandemic and everything, and towards the end of the pandemic, I was like, this is ridiculous, the way our healthcare system is set up. Like it really is a sick care system instead of a healthcare system.
Yeah.
So because of that, I decided I was going to leave that completely and start something new and different. And this is where actually you came into the picture before I even met you, because I realized I needed to basically educate myself on how to be an entrepreneur. I had the whole doctor thing down, but I was a budding entrepreneur. So I was thirsty for knowledge. And that's when I found Pitch Anything. And I'm reading the book, and I'm reading about the reptilian brain. That made sense to me because you presented things in a very scientific manner. And I've never seen it done before, where you merge like business, entrepreneurship, and actual science together. So it clicked. It's one of the few business books that I read that actually clicked for me, so much so that I read it twice.
Yeah.
And there was this one part in the book where you're talking about frames and everything. And I took it as a sign. I'm like, this is a sign from God that I need to do this. Because you have this part in there where the ultimate frame is that even the president of the United States has to take his clothes off for a doctor. Yeah. And it was the doctor frame. And I'm like, here's my sign. So I have to thank you, because had it not been for that, I would have not taken that as the green light to go make it happen. And here, this is year 6 of my practice. What started off as me figuring out I wanted to make the best preventative private medicine program on the planet, and in the process attracted the top entrepreneurs in the country. And now Blindspot's essentially become really a secret society for top entrepreneurs that want their own private medical system.
Yeah. Okay. 10 years from now, what's one part of today's standard medical care that will look like a joke?
I think your typical office visit to like your primary care doctor.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, let's say there's probably 10 main reasons why somebody's like, got to go to the doctor. It's going to be like an earache, a sinus infection, a UTI. Like there's really only like 10. And realistically, like we're almost at the place now where you're going to go to an AI kiosk,
sure,
or it's just going to be on your phone, and it's going to be, here's my symptoms. They're going to be like, okay, well, here's what you Do you go down the list of these questions? You have these comorbidities, yes or no, and then it's going to here the drone, the Amazon pharmacy drone is going to bring you your medicine, right? So realistically, that's probably not 10 years. It's more like 3 to 5.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's going to be that's going to be the next thing.
I want to give doctors one little piece of credit. So I had a good doctor, and she moved off to do concierge medicine. She was good. So I was at Rick Steele's house, and we were in the hot tub. It was freezing cold in Scottsdale. You know, it was like in January. But the hot tub was like 190 degrees, and it was like 20 degrees, 30 degrees outside. And so half my body I was heating in the hot tub, you know, with my legs in it. And so half of it was in 190 degrees, and the other half of my body was at 30 degrees, right? And then that probably would have been fine, but we were also drinking beer. And it was like this special beer that Rick got from some, you know, monastery in Belgium, you know, that he'd been saving. So it was, I don't even know if it was beer. Then the next day, I got this crazy rash, right? That was like on my leg, and it was itching like mad, right? And so we put something, I went to put something on it, like some kind of itch, and it moved, right? So there's a name for it, I don't know what it is. But then it like moved to your neck, and then it moved to the top of my head. And so it's this crazy, like mad Tasmanian spider rash from Scottsdale, and it's moving around. So then, you know me, I went to Walgreens, and I just went through every aisle, and anything that said itch on it, I bought it.
You bought it.
I bought it. I don't care what it was, right? Insect bite, right? So there's $400 of itch stuff. And even the checkout girl, you know, it was like not a pharmacist or anything. She's like, these are a lot of different things that do.
Like, you sure to mix these,
like,
bro?
These do all different things. I go, I want them all. So then I start trying to get rid of this rash, you know, myself. With all these insect bite and crazy, you know, medications. None of it works for 3 days. So then I go to the doctor, and she's like, oh, this is like rubella or something, right? And she's like, here, take one of those little 2 milligram pill, right? It will go away. I took the pill in the office, and boom. She's like, why didn't you come ask about this? You know, I could have saved you a week of misery. And it went, so certainly doctors do have a place still. For sure, we can get into that. But I
you
agree
just
with you.
just to go on the back end of that, but you just described exactly what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Because right now we live in a day and age where people are so frustrated with the healthcare system, which I totally understand, and they're trying to find a solution.
Sure.
And so they're grabbing at anything for a solution. Yeah. And whenever there's an opportunity, unfortunately, this is where you actually have a lot of snake oil salesmen that usually show up. It's happened all throughout history. So there's a large number of what I call bioquackers that are out there, that if you start scrolling on Instagram, you're going to see, you know what, you need some expensive Irish mineral salt.
In some
to fix your problem.
ways, we've gone back in time 200 years.
Yes.
Right? Where the quacks would come by with these snake oil solutions, you know, to the village. You don't have any way to validate anything, but you had the malady. So you're just going to take 200 years ago, it'd be the guy rolling for town. You know, yesterday, it'd be the guy rolling through Instagram.
Yeah.
But because the cost and the certainty and the, even getting to a doctor is so hard, almost as hard as it was 200 years ago. You had to travel to the big city and we're going back in time, not forwards in time.
I'm waiting for there to be an Instagram post about organic Korean leeches. That's going to be the watch. That's going to be coming soon.
All right. I'm going to try it. What does it do? So here, you deal with people who already have it all. What's the blind spot that they have that they don't see until it's too late?
Good question. Very good question. Time. So in my experience, what happens is you have hard charging entrepreneurs that they've traded their health for wealth. And so now they're trading that wealth to try to buy back time.
Yeah.
And that's the scenario. And I'm guilty of that as well,
Sure.
Throughout my career. So, but that's the scenario. So it becomes, okay, well, in this day and age, is there a fountain of youth? Are we going to Ponce de Leon this whole thing and try to actually find, now that we have as technologically advanced as we've ever been, what can we do to actually create something? And unfortunately, we're in this biohack time frame of period of human existence. The issue that I have with it is that a hack is a shortcut, and in life there's no shortcuts. So the reality of the situation is like, okay, if you want to do things the right way, yes, there is a way, and yes, there's an opportunity, but it's a narrow path actually. And this is what I mean by a private healthcare system. It's a lot like flying. Okay, so you can fly coach, you can fly first class, which is better than coach, where you're still going to the airport, you're still participating in the same system, or you can fly private. Now, when you fly private, you take off when you want, you land when you want. Heck, sometimes you can even like change flight path midway. It's whatever the hell you want. And most folks don't realize is that that is an option, but you have to be willing to make an investment in it, like anything else.
Yeah. So let me go down the list of things that I wrote that I wanted to run down. Everybody's got wearables now.
Yeah.
I use 3 wearables when I go to bed because it gives you different data. Apple Watch, Whoop. Oh, these are mine. Apple Watch, Whoop, and Aura, right? So when people talk to you about their wearables, like what's the data that they're obsessed with that you're like, that doesn't matter? And what really should they be looking at that the wearables can produce with the current technology?
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, I'll say it depends on the wearable, because you're right. Some give different data more so than others. And then it also depends on the person. So for instance, a Whoop band, for example, I've had some patients that have a very hairy wrist, right? And so because of that, it messes with the sensor. Yeah. So the Aura may be a better choice, so having the different modality depending on the person. A lot of times folks really focus on their weight, for example, right? So weight overall, important. Weight day to day, not so important. Like once a week, that's helpful. But the reality of the situation, it's summertime, consuming more water, depending on your activity level, you're going to have water shifts and everything. So maybe 2 to 3 pounds within a day or two. And a lot of times folks will really stress out about that.
Wait, so you're saying to stop weighing my wife every morning and then telling her what so maybe we don't need all that counseling. Wow, you do relationship stuff too.
That's
amazing.
It's a full package.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. I never thought of that. Okay, so wait once a week.
Yeah, like weighing once a week, I think is a better idea.
Right.
Respiratory rate is one of those ones. Again, it's going to vary depending on activity level and such. The real meat and potatoes of it. So oxygen levels when you sleep. It's because sleep, that's our biggest time of restoration. HRV, so heart rate variability, huge, as so important, so much so that if you look at, in terms of longevity, as we age, if you can continue to keep your heart rate variability in range, that's actually one of the predictors for how long someone will live.
Yeah.
So that's a very important one also. Steps, all of it counts.
Yeah.
So, before we got started, you were running to the back, you're running over there, we walked over there. It's like, if you're taking like 10, 15,000 steps in a day, does it make sense for them to go put you on a treadmill for 45 minutes? Probably not.
Yeah.
So all of those factors really come into play.
So my schizophrenia is healthy? This is awesome. Like everything that I do wrong, what this reminds me, sorry to step on your explanation, but I bought this F-350 dually crew cab long bed.
Awesome.
Lifted up on 37s.
Wow.
Right. And it is amazing. And my accountant was like, and it was the year they did this 100% depreciation.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is horrible. You are being rewarded for your bad decisions because you depreciate, all 130 grand of this year, which you needed, right? Mm-hmm. He's like, I almost don't want to tell you about it because the bad decisions you're making, you're being rewarded for. So some things that you're inadvertently doing could actually be healthy.
That's a wonderful analogy. Yes.
Okay. So steps, I agree. Steps, HRV, weight. What about this deep sleep, REM sleep? How good are the? I find my Oura ring, and I'm way down. Like when I see those lists, they go billionaires, tech, hacks for sleep. Those are all stuff in my junk pile. Like I'm $150,000 past that junk pile. So I'm way down the sleep technology. As you're hearing, but I do find that the REM sleep and the deep sleep out of the Aura Ring, whether they're right or wrong, are dead accurate predictors of what's going to happen during my day.
For the following day.
I wake up, check that previous night's data, and that will tell me what I'm going to have in terms of fatigue or energy during that day. Dead accurate. So, and I like that data better than the Whoop data. But what do you think about this deep sleep and REM sleep data coming off the devices?
It's your most restorative. I think, no device is perfect. And if you're going to use that data to make decisions, I would pick the one that seems that it's most accurate. And you, just like you said, you can tell based on how you feel the next day. So, for example, if your Whoop band is telling you, oh, you got great sleep last night, and you're rubbing your eyes and you need 3 espresso shots when you wake up, accuracy may be off there. So I would first of all make sure your data is valid, right? Then the second part to that is once you have good, it'd be better to have great. The majority of hard charging entrepreneurs, the reason why they're not getting deep sleep is because that to-do list. You know which one I mean.
Yeah.
It's this long to-do, it's never ending. It's this to-do list that's constantly running through your head. And then it's 1:30 in the morning and you're like, I didn't send that email. Or I need to make sure that I do that. I need to give this to my assistant. And it'll pop up out of absolutely nowhere.
Right.
You can actually decrease that by going through the methodology of either writing it down about an hour or so before you go to bed, because you need to protect your bedtime. So about an hour before you go to bed, you write down all the things that you need to do. In this day and age of we all have an iPhone, there is something with the actual act of writing. There's something therapeutic about it, where it's almost just getting it out of your head into the muscles of your fingers and just putting it on a page. That now it's in a place where you don't have to think about it anymore. I used to have this exact same problem where I would have this to-do list in my head all the time. And just by actually writing it down, it's like it expunges it out of your mind, and then it's there. Then the next problem is, well, what do you do with it? So if you have an assistant, one of the things that I learned from one of my friends and mentors, her name's Candy Valentino. Candy has this, and I don't know if she came up with it or it came from somewhere, but DEA, delegate, eliminate, automate. All right? So it's like that. If you put down all the things on that list that now you can then hand off to somebody else, something even as low tech as snap a picture of it and send it to your assistant, at least now it's done. So you moved it from that to-do pile to the done pile, and you're not ruminating about it all night long. Freeing up that extra space can really make a big difference.
I love that. I'm going to start doing it. It's better than the system I use, which is sort of scanning the news and hoping something worse than what's happening to me happens to somebody I know. And then that settles my cortisol. And I'm like, yeah, you take that. Then I feel better about myself. And my problems are less than that. And since I know so many people, in the news and entertainment and everything, it works.
Yeah.
There's always somebody, stepping in a landmine. But I like your system seems more predictable. So I had some more of my questions. If you could run one test on someone who looks, sounds, talks, lives life like me across America, what would that test be and why?
It would be, it's a combo test, so it's 2 in 1.
Yeah.
It's a CTA test, so it's a CAT scan angiogram.
Yeah.
And with a calcium score. And it's okay to say we've actually done that on you.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
Right.
And the reason why is if you want to start looking at, throughout the United States, number one killer is heart disease.
Yeah.
And if we unpack why, well, especially if you're over age 40 and you're a male, then you look at the timing of it, it's what I call the hungry man generation. So you and I are close enough in age. You remember when Hungry Man meals came out, and that was a thing.
Yeah.
And then microwaves and Hungry Man meals. And if you did well on your math test, you get that fried chicken meal, son.
Yeah.
So that was the diet that we grew up with. It was
chunky. When Campbell's chunky soup, it had protein in it.
Yeah, you had the football
what?
players. You're like, I want to be like that guy.
I don't even think they had to put sodium. Those cans probably had 3,500 grams or milligrams or whatever of sodium in it, 4,000.
All kinds of junk.
Terrible. Monosodium glutamate, sodium, sugar. Highly manufactured or processed food, and probably protein that was a protein a long time ago.
Right. Exactly. So, but that's what we grew up eating. So you take that and you compound that over, that with stress over years and years and years, and you've got all of the building blocks of heart disease right there. So if I had to choose one, that would be the test.
Yeah. I have to be careful here, right? But when you go to the doctor, they're never the paragon of health. So they have all this information. They work in healthcare. It's like if I sign up for a personal trainer, the guy's not going to be smoking a cigarette, having a Starbucks, triple frappuccino, and doesn't look like he's in shape. But I'm getting healthcare from somebody who I don't want to describe any individually because one of my doctors will go, "That's me," right? I'm going to get sued for this. But the doctors that I have don't look like they have access to a lot of healthcare information.
It's a good point. So tell you a personal story. I was kind of about midpoint in my career, and I was working at a cancer center at the time, and it was around Halloween. And I remember some of the nurses had dressed up in costume to help cheer up the patients. It was a cancer center. There's a lot of people dying, right? And so in passing, I looked at the Polaroid picture, and there's this fat guy in the corner. He was sitting down at the desk that I had been at, and he was this bald fat guy. And he was wearing a white coat. I saw the stethoscope, and I'm like, "Who's that bald fat doctor? I don't recognize that guy working." And I was like, "Oh, it's me." And that was my moment. That was when I was like, "Oh no, this is not going to work." Shaved my head, decided I'm going to get fit. Started down a whole journey of CrossFit and triathlon and all kind of craziness that I've done at this point. But that was my moment. And so you're absolutely right. This does happen. And I think the reason why is imagine a career where you're working long hours, you have a lot of stress, your paycheck continues to dwindle.
Oh, investment banking?
And the people that you are taking care of, or your customers in that sense, are almost always angry and never happy.
Yeah.
And so, yes, should my fellow doctors that have taken the Hippocratic Oath be more serious about their health? 100%.
Yeah.
At the same time, there are also the way the industry, and it truly is an industry, unfortunately, the way the industry is set up, it's set up that they are going to lose no matter what. And I mean, hell, I was in that place too, where I was comfort eating and exhausted, and it just sucked.
Before we finish, I want to do a little bit of psychology, but I know your background is in biology, but really interesting in your background, you have a co-degree or whatever it's called in biology and also philosophy.
Wow, you did your homework, my friend.
I didn't do any homework. I can just tell the way that you the way that you speak is so ecumenical and theocratic. It just tells me there's some richness there.
Well,
in
thank
your
you.
background.
I appreciate that.
So I do want to talk about some human psychology, but before that, I want to talk about, drugs. There are these, you and I have talked about this BPC 157. Mm-hmm. We've talked about the, classical, bodybuilding or training drugs, Winstrol, clenbuterol, Russian Dianabol, Eniabol, Sustanon, all those kinds of and there's probably much better, ones than that. But if you're not, if you're like me, if you're in banking, if you're in lawyering, if you're, a theologian, a philosopher, you're not in the Olympics. You're not in the NHL. You're not getting, if you're a lawyer, if you're, if your job is to model spreadsheets, you're not going in for, performance enhancing drug testing. Why not use the things that are available to, if pro athletes use it, the reason that they are restricted from using it is because it's unfair. Mm-hmm. But if you model spreadsheets, who cares what physical shape you're in, right? Where's the line fall on performance enhancing drugs for casual or amateur, athletes. You go to CrossFit. I do, training for triathlon or a 5K. I'm just, trying to get my personal best. I'm playing in a soccer league. Why not go for PEDs?
Absolutely. So the approach that I take with my patients, the acronym's POP. Okay. So prevention. Number one is you want to prevent any problems that are there. And particularly, we live in a day and age where we have all these different modalities between genetic screenings that you can do, full body MRI on an annual basis, learning what your biological age versus like your telomere length and so forth. If you do all those things first, if you have a foundation of that, that's when you can get to the next phase, the optimization phase, that can be really transformative. So with that, I'm talking about precision TRT, testosterone replacement, peptide therapy, like you alluded to with BPC 157, which that in itself could be like its own podcast. Adding muscle mass with strategic anabolic use, which is something most conventional doctors just don't do.
Sure.
Right?
Well, I'll tell you who doesn't do it. My doctor. Because I go, hey, can I get some Winstrol? And she's like, no.
Yeah.
Right?
But the thing is that it's because it's been demonized.
Yeah.
And the reality of the situation is, if you look at the other facts, which show that the amount of muscle mass that you have in your 40s will actually determine the amount of muscle mass you have if you're lucky enough to live into your 80s. And we also know that muscle mass is associated with longevity. So if we know that someone is going to slowly dwindle in size over time, like you picture your typical 40-year-old, now picture your typical 80-year-old.
Yeah.
It's a very big difference in body composition.
Sure.
So if the person I use as a perfect example is Sylvester Stallone. So Rambo, when I was a kid, you look at him when he was like 35, the guy's almost 80 years old now. He's still in shows and movies. He's still jacked. It's because he started at such a better place before. And this was before optimization or anything was even a sexy thing. He was doing it back then.
Right.
So the answer is that yes, anyone can, but you have to, step one, you have to get out of the conventional system.
Yeah.
Step two, you have to go to somebody who knows what they're doing, not just some bro science, because that's how you could end up with organ failure or cardiomegaly, where the heart literally grows too big to pump itself, and you end up with valve failure and things like that. If you don't do the appropriate cancer screening and such, when you're trying to grow muscle, you end up growing other things, like God forbid if a cancer's there.
Right.
It's like throwing gas on the fire. So can it be done? Yes. Should it be done, in my opinion? That's where it gets into the philosophical side.
Yeah.
Because if God put you here for a reason, and your reason here is to not be mediocre, and you want to actually live a full life, but also really provide to those that you love and those that you serve, then you should be your absolute best no matter what stage of life you're in.
So I agree. And the other thing is time. I'm super booked with time with the project that we're in. I would be gearing up like crazy if I had the time to also do the things in parallel that require, that are required alongside gearing up. And so for that, one of my last subjects is, and I try not to swear on this podcast because families can listen to it, but earmuffs, vegetables. All right. Here we go. So I got a bad, what's the CT scan, right? How bad was mine again? Was it terrible?
Yours? I've seen worse.
So seen worse, but where is it, in the greater scheme of things?
Your actual results? Yeah. If I recall, I'd have to go back and look exactly, but if I recall, your cardiac age was like, I think 5 or 6 years older than your actual age.
Yeah.
Which
I think it was closer than that.
Which is actually pretty typical. Like if you look at your history and all the things you've done, the high pressure situations that you've been in, I can't imagine the number of high pressure boardrooms you've been in. Right?
Oh my God.
So you take that and you compound that over a 30-something year career, then it's kind of to be expected.
So there's things, that, but the main thing that I've read, researched, heard of, evidence on is to, get away from the animal proteins and get into the vegetables. The problem is I am convinced humans are not built to survive on vegetables. Like that is not a thing. Like you can't keep weight on. You can't eat enough of them. You can't get enough satiety unless you supplement them with sodium and sauces and stuff. It doesn't give you satisfaction, and you lose weight on them. It's hard to eat enough calories and work out on vegetables. I'm convinced when I see the movie, whatever it was, or I see the reports of bodybuilders or strength athletes or weight trainers or, pro athletes or Olympians are on, vegetarian diets. I'm sort of convinced that it's the same thing as, hey, I don't do doping or I don't take performance enhancing drugs. They're like, for the public, they're like, yeah, I'm a vegetarian. And then it's like, oh, but late at night, I pop away that secret hideaway shelf and pop a Twinkie in my mouth. Yes, I do. There's some kind of like midnight delivery of Ruth's Chris, filet
to the back door.
You are not a professional football player on the vegetables, all right? You will not convince me otherwise. So now I'm mixing in, fish and chicken, with it, but it's so hard to keep the protein and the volume and the weight up on a vegetarian diet. But it is good for cleaning out the the arteries and trying to improve your CT coronary scan results and not having worse heart disease. How does this all come together in your sharp mind?
There's newer data. We're talking pretty new, like within the last 2 years. When you start looking at LDL cholesterol, and you do the blood test, you'll get a number, and then that's been labeled as bad cholesterol for quite some time. Well, it's looking at cholesterol. It's kind of like looking at cars. So it's like saying, okay, well, you have too many of this type of car that's here, versus a brand of car, versus too many of, is it a sedan? Is it an SUV? Is it a economy car? Subparticle testing that's something that's very important. So when you start doing subparticle testing, that's when you're really getting down into the nitty gritty. And that's important because when you actually start thinking of the actual physiology of what happens to cause this heart disease in the first place, we have these shuttles. These are called lipoproteins that carry certain subparticles into the wall of the vessel. So it's not coating the vessel, it's in the wall of it. It's best to think of this like a garden hose. If you've ever cut a garden hose in half, then you see it's got multiple layers to it. Same thing with our arteries. And what happens is, if you have enough deposition in the walls of these arteries over time, they calcify, they harden. Same scenario, like if you leave a garden hose out in the sun for too long, it becomes brittle.
Right.
Well, why does that become problematic? Well, it's only problematic if you have a pressure change, blood pressure goes up and down, or a certain movement, crane the neck, for example, and stretch out the carotid to some degree, where now you've caused a cut. Literally, like if you were to cut your finger, this happens on the inside of the artery where it splits a little bit. And as that process happens over and over again, the lumen of the artery slowly narrows, such to the point that if it pinches off completely, you have a heart attack if you're talking about a vessel in the heart, or you have a brain attack, aka stroke, if you're
Stephen
talking
King.
about for the brain.
Yes. This is like a Stephen King novel.
But
out of the dark cave came your life.
But that's essentially what happens. So then it becomes...
God, it's horrible sounding.
It is horrible sounding. But now that you know that, you can say, okay, cool. What can I do to actually decrease certain particles? What can I do to increase the pliability of those vessels? And so forth. And that's really where the anti-aging part starts coming in. So you're absolutely right. Can you do a lot with diet? Yes, you can. Like that's the fuel for our bodies. However, if you're just doing that, it's not going to be enough.
It just where do you fall? And just so hard to keep muscle mass on vegetables.
It is. I didn't. So I don't make recommendations to folks until I try it on myself. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go hardcore vegan. And I did it for 6 months, and I lost the majority of my muscle mass. And I'm also convinced if you have a vegan audience, they're gonna not like this. But I didn't think it was
just a reminder.
Yeah, probably not.
There's one vegan.
Yeah.
And they didn't get this far.
Yeah, they didn't get this
in
far.
the
Yeah.
podcast.
So on that note, like, I wasn't convinced that the whole vegan diet was actually very healthy because I was eating a lot of TVP, textured vegetable protein, which is essentially protein that's been chemically stripped from a bunch of vegetables.
Yeah.
For that, just eat the vegetable. And you can't get the volume of protein. I'm a big believer. If the question becomes, hey doc, what's the best diet? Right? I can tell you it's actually not carnivore. And the reason why it's not carnivore is because if you look at our dentition and everything, you just literally look at history, we've evolved that we're omnivores. And it makes sense that we would be omnivores because otherwise if we just ate one thing, we would have died off like the dinosaurs did, right? If your best diet is going to be the one that you can stick to. That's number one. Number two, some sort of variation of a high protein, low sugar Mediterranean diet is going to be the best one that there is for literally all of us. Why? Because if you look at what that's made up of, it's going to be lean proteins, fresh fruits and vegetables, minimally processed. So the easier way to put it is nothing out of a bag, nothing out of a box, and made by God. If you're doing that 80% of the time, you are so well ahead of the curve, and you're literally going to feel different just by doing it.
Awesome. Very helpful. Trying to calm down on this subject, but these subjects do excite me. Here's what I want you to come in on. So if you have an iPhone and the new Photos app sucks because you just want to quickly find a photo, it's chronological, and you scroll all the way to the bottom, and it used to bottom out, right? So when you stop scrolling, that was your last photo. It's in your last 10 photos, and you want to switch it to, hey, Molly and I went motorcycle riding on Friday. That's got to be somewhere in my last 20 photos. I go to bottom out the way it used to, the photo app, it would bounce at the bottom. I'd scan the last 10, 15. I'd find the photo of us motorcycle riding and send it to you. Easy day. Now there's the infinite scroll. So they don't want it to bounce at the bottom. They want it to just keep going. So you go right past the bottom into now you're into vacation from 3 years ago to baby photos. You're like, baby photos. Kid is 11 years old. I want the motorcycle riding photo from yesterday. So then you're search motorcycle, but most of your motorcycle stuff is uploaded to the cloud. So the Insta search doesn't go to the cloud, and it's a mess. But the point is, it's now infinite scroll, and I feel like that's the metaphor for our lives. There's the list of to do. The opportunities are the things in front of us, the hobbies, the travel, the ideas, the exposure to new things and ideas and things to get involved with. Even on this, you're like, hey, it's really important to be writing. I probably have 200 fountain pens, because I enjoy writing. I have all these Japanese papers. I love writing. I write every morning. I write a note to my son every morning. But people listen to me like, yeah, I should start writing. There's infinite things you can start, even if you just like motorcycles. There's cruising motorcycles, there's sport motorcycles, there's dirt bikes, there's on-road, off-road. We just, in our culture, in our society, with the money we have, game of money, infinite things to do, and the list never stops expanding.
Yeah.
If you use the tools that you've been exposed to, the philosophy, your life experience, how do we get to stop adding things to the list? One, start contracting the list and make space for the things we should be doing, which are the exercise, the steps, the time with family, and the winding down at the end of the day to get to sleep.
There's a concept I came up with to approach this because I was getting overwhelmed and I felt like I was being pulled in every which direction. And in the process thereof became a bit of a minimalist because otherwise I'll end up having like a bunch of stuff around. I literally, if you go in my home, I get rid of stuff as fast as I can.
Amazing.
And the concept I call is 3 ordeals. And if you consider that every one of us, every man, every woman, at some point in our life, we face 3 ordeals that we must overcome if we're going to have a successful and a happy life. Earlier this year, my dad died.
I'm sorry.
And it was in his final lesson, he taught me something that I didn't expect. He was there on his deathbed. And what stood out to me, there was no question of hey, he wishes he had a fancier wristwatch at some point. He wishes he had, a fancy sports car. He talked about two things. One, he wished that he could have my mom's ravioli one last time. And he turned to me and he said, make sure your brother and sister are always okay. That was it. So I find that we busy ourselves quite a bit with all this other stuff. Life is complex yet simple at the same time. And it's that way because as humans, we really are amazing beings. What we're capable of, the beauty and everything that we're capable of, the relationships we're able to create. Yet so often we kind of get caught up in the rat race and we lose focus on what the main things are. So the three ordeals, if you picture this as like a pyramid, where at the very pinnacle, the very top of the pyramid is death, but in a happy way, not in this morbid way. An easy way to picture this, if you look at the pyramid that's on a dollar bill, same concept, okay? The base of the pyramid is health. Health in both body and in mind. So we've talked about all the things that you can do physically to basically be at your absolute peak, whether you're 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever, all the way to the end. The other part of that is mind. We all have demons. We all have shit that we've been through. That if you don't deal with those things, you end up projecting that onto others, projecting it onto your kids. Those are our demons. It's up to us to deal with it. The next level of that pyramid is relationships. Now, you and I both know relationships can be very powerful. Not just intimate ones, not just family ones, but especially friendships. A friend of mine, Brad Lee, he taught me this phrase: the more hands you shake, the more money you make. And it's true, because if you actually have a real relationship with someone, if you know, like, and trust them, you'll want to do business with them. You'll want to give them your money because I want to give you my money so you have a better life because I care about you, right? Which leads to the final part, that very top part of the pyramid, which is wealth. That's where money comes in. But it's not just money. So yes, there's certainly a monetary side because I've been broke, I've been wealthy. It's way easier to be wealthy. You have much more options, but it doesn't necessarily lead to happiness. And that's where that art of actually teaching others, sharing your wisdom with others, that's really the true wealth. Once you complete this entire pyramid, which, by the way, this is a process all throughout life, my belief is that when you hit that very pinnacle, that when we die, that was what we've been working towards all along. So if you want a simplistic way, asking yourself, is this ascending me up the pyramid or not? And if it isn't, it becomes esoteric and you let it go.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. We're going to wrap it up here. This has been the Game of Money. David Boyd, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. This could have been, you could have gotten the exact same value of this podcast to listeners by just deleting my voice. If you have AI, just go condense this podcast without that high squeaky voice and only keep the low rumbling, majestic, honest medical voice of Dr. Boyd and play that for me. And you'll be a lot better. But, this thing comes two sides to every pancake, no matter how thin. You're on one side, and I'm on the other. Thank you so much.
Man, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me.